Mr. Lyndon, Israel is telling everyone in North Gaza, that's about 1.1 million people, to relocate to the south of the Strip in the next 24 hours. There are about 9 hours left to that deadline. The Israeli government, the military, would arguably have calculated the improbability of that happening. Why ask the impossible?
It's an excellent question. It is practically impossible. And I've seen this dilemma playing out today with friends of mine and their families in the Gaza Strip, where people are trying to scramble to move essentially half the population of the Gaza Strip to the other half, the southern half of the territory. Some of them have said there's no point. They're staying at home. They're barricading themselves in and hoping for the best. Others are now arranging to stay with absolute strangers down close to the Egyptian border in the hope that it will allow them to escape the worst of the carnage that does seem to be coming following a ground invasion that most expect in the coming hours and days. And again, we've heard calls from international agencies, from the United Nations, for Israel to really reconsider this and to try and approach alternate ideas that may sort of still allow Israel to do what it seems fairly dedicated to doing at the moment, which is removing Hamas as the governing authority inside the Gaza Strip. It's important to note the biggest hospital in Gaza is in the north of Gaza. It is at the moment overrun. There's between, I think, 4,000 and 6,000 injured people there who can't be treated, who are running out of electricity for that hospital. You can't move severely injured people to the other side of the Gaza Strip without putting their lives in very serious jeopardy. So we really would urge throughout this crisis the prioritization of civilian life. What happened on Saturday was an abject and disgraceful example of an attack on civilian life, the worst terrorist attack we've seen in the history of the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. But we must not allow that now to allow further civilian lives to be lost and huge fallout for people's family and for many, many people I'm speaking to who are very scared.
At the moment, Mr. Lyndon, there are many who've chosen to stay. We have seen images of people who are leaving, many families headed south to Wadi Gaza, towards the Rafah border. Talk to us about the sheer vulnerability and logistics of actually trying to move these people under these circumstances.
I mean, it's a very small territory and we're talking about half the population. So you don't even need to be an expert on the topography or the demographics of Gaza to understand how difficult that is. There is a lack of fuel and diesel to be able to actually drive roads and there's very few radial roads that will also connect the north to the south. Many of them have been destroyed and damaged in the airstrikes taking place over the last 6 days. And also when you try and move half a population with a 24-hour deadline, when everybody understands at the end of that deadline, an intense amount of violence is going to commence, you create a sense of panic. People will be taking extraordinary steps to try and save themselves and their families. I expect there to be accidents, things that will happen in the progress of this huge population move that will result in yet more unnecessary loss of life and injury to Palestinians. And it's not even clear at the end of that process whether the people who are in southern Gaza will ultimately be safe if there is an invasion. And we must remember as well that Hamas are reading the same warnings that the civilian population they hide within are reading. And I would imagine they are probably moving infrastructure and personnel to the south as well. So literally nobody will be safe in Gaza with some of the violence that is to be expected in the coming days.
There's certainly no guarantee of safety if they reach the south. And if they reach the Rafah border, as an example, we know that the Egyptian authorities have closed their side of the border crossing. Just who controls the Palestinian side of that crossing is unclear. Do we know? Do we have clarity on that? And can Egypt realistically be even part of a successful evacuation here?
I mean, Egypt's role here is crucial. I know that the United Nations Special Coordinator, Tor Wennesland, was in Cairo yesterday, may still be there, meeting with the Egyptian Foreign Minister. I'm certain that Secretary Blinken is having discussions with him whilst he is in the region. I know he's in Jordan today. It's complicated on the Egyptian side in that they have opened and closed Rafah sort of repeatedly, closed more often than not in the years since President Sisi has come to power in Egypt. And there is also another factor here which isn't being reported on quite as much, in that 70% of the population of the Gaza Strip are themselves refugees or their descendants from the war in 1948. And there is real concern, sincere concern amongst many Palestinians I speak to, that if they leave Gaza, which, you know, from a life and limb perspective would be the smart thing to do now if Rafah opens, they worry whether they'll ever be allowed to return again. Now, we can argue about whether or not that fear is justified, but it is certainly sincerely felt by very many Palestinians with the memory of refugee crises in the past. And of course, Egypt is thinking the same thing, in that they don't want to suddenly be responsible for hundreds of thousands of Palestinian refugees who are permanently ensconced in the Sinai Peninsula. I know nobody is really saying that publicly, but I'm pretty sure that is part of the calculation that is going on right now, which is why I think at minimum at this moment, a humanitarian corridor needs to be created right now for basic goods to get into Gaza, because that really has not been happening since Saturday morning. And then obviously to facilitate exit, if that is possible, with the guarantee that Palestinians will be able to return to their homes after these hostilities end, which cannot come soon enough.
I want to thank you for your insights there, Mr. Lyndon. John Lyndon, there, Executive Director at Alliance for Middle East Peace.